The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Midweek edition is here. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. 489-1240 to get in. 800-825-5865. Can always find and chat on the stream. Hail Varsity YouTube, where you can watch the show, like and subscribe. Hail Varsity Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Different platforms on social media to watch and catch up on the show. And as always, along the Hail Varsity Radio Network, we'll dive into some more names finding their way to the 402, at least visiting before they make their decision. Offensive line of focus, a return man, defensive back to highlight as well. Pretty good article we'll get into from Sam McEwen of the World Herald when it comes to the playoff profile. You have 4 Big Ten teams that are in the dance, and we'll see how long they keep on dancing. But, where can Nebraska go beyond whatever this year finishes out? The bigger picture. Mike Babcock going to be with us from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports. Babbers in about 15 minutes in hour 2. We'll catch up with Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald. And then a Jock Doc with Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic. What's the prognosis of one Patrick Mahomes? Bowling last night. Are you a last-minute Christmas shopper guy, or are you all handled? I'm asking you, Elijah. I'm asking you, Justice Rhody, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. I have all of it checked out and picked out for Junior and Mama. So it's all handled. If they keep behaving, it won't get sent back before next week. Kind of that's where I'm at stance-wise.
It's the gifts that I was inspired by. Like I had a moment of divine inspiration for my gift giving. That's all been taken care of. The things that I have not even begun. So it's going to be a stressful next week or so as I try to get some last things buttoned up. But what I love my family did this year, as opposed to, this is my immediate family, as opposed to going and buying gifts for everybody, we all threw our names into a hat of sorts. It's
Who'd you draw?
App. Can't say that because that's still a secret. And my family listens to this show. So
at least yours does.
But no, we did that, and we're doing Secret Santa this year with limits on price and whatnot. So that makes things much easier as opposed to needing to buy presents for everybody. It's just one person this year. So mucho gusto, highly recommend. I've also never been a big fan since, I guess I shouldn't say never. I was when I was a kid, but ever since I turned 16, the whole buying people things for Christmas really took away from the whole receiving thing. So now I just kind of don't like either aspect of it. I like spending time with my family and eating prime rib. That's why I like Christmas.
That's it. It's about the time and the camaraderie versus what'd you get me?
Exactly.
I mean, at one point, hopefully in your lives, it shifts from, well, I got to go do some time here and put in a little FaceTime to, man, that was good to see everybody. Justice, you got your holiday shopping done, or are you just neck deep in finals?
Finished up the last final today, so now it's just worried about, getting on back and getting some stuff ready for the family. I know we're already scheming to get Mom some presents, so
good.
You know how that is.
Sure. No, that'll be all right. There was one year, I think I went too heavy with the gag gift, and my late father loved Nebraska football. Mike checks in, says Secret Santa. Would that be Clausburn? Speaking of Clausburn,
in a sense, he kind of
is a Secret Santa. Claus is going to be with us on Friday, not only for a Friday forecast, but it's the annual, and he's done this since 2011. We have always done the annual naughty and nice list. Clausburn has his naughty list. He has his nice list, and Clausburn has gifts for each side of the ledger. So we'll roll that out on Friday of this week as we get into the weekend. But now, from a gag gift standpoint, for whatever reason, it was the early 90s, and it was kind of when Colorado was continuing to threaten Nebraska football for Big 8 supremacy. So somehow, some way, I got a hold. Back in the day, a lot of us we'd wear boxers, and as we were in kind of our tween years, we'd wear boxers when we'd play YMCA basketball as the shorts. Now we'd have shorts, underneath those shorts, but that was kind of the thing to do. Some would wear Nebraska stuff, some would wear Miami stuff, some would wear Carolina stuff, but
some would wear underwear.
Well, no, you'd have like your compression shorts underneath, and then you'd have your boxers, right?
Okay.
Well, no, and the compression shorts were always overrated. Now, as I look back at them, but I found a pair of Colorado ones, and I got those for my dad, and he wasn't as mad that I got him Colorado stuff as that I got him like a triple XL. He like, dude, I'm not that big. I know there's we used to nickname my dad Chunky, and he didn't like that. Well, he was more PO'd about the waist size than anything. Well, it's Colorado, but I'm not triple XL in the old waist. I'm not drinking gravy every night. So that's what he was kind of ticked about. So that was the one foray into gag gifts.
I love a good gag gift.
They're all right. Yeah, they're not bad.
It's my favorite kind of gift to give.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, so the household is praying that you're not their secret Santa. Or do you not do the gag gift?
No, I tend to have a good gift and a gag gift.
Okay.
The one of each. One that's a little bit thoughtful, where you could probably use this, and then one that I really, truly thought of that I was inspired by.
A blowtorch.
Well, it's like...
This will help with the yard work.
I mean, what are some of my go-tos? The 5-pound bucket of cheese balls one time was a good one.
That's cool.
And also wrapped up underneath the tree, no one's going to guess what that is. Like, you look at it and you go, that's large, and there's a weird rattle sound.
And it tastes like lime. Yeah, I get it. Let's Nebraska's got their kind of wish list here from the portal, and it would be a gift to enhance that offensive line, to kind of keep with the gift-giving theme. And Nebraska's been trying to address the offensive line. We've talked about that this week. We'll hit on it with Mike Babcock as well. And it's really the new normal, and what you want to be able to do as a college football program is, well, go get your dudes that can be starters right away. Case in point, look at a guy like Seton at Colorado. As good as advertised, and got better as the year went on that left tackle spot. He was the number one offensive tackle in the country.
We'll say learned some lessons from the Husker game.
He did.
And
he's not the same player now as Colorado's going to the Alamo Bowl against BYU as when Jamari Butler and company were wearing him out, Ty Robinson wearing him out in week 2. But that's a player you targeted and you landed, right? You got handled, and he's been pretty good for you. So Nebraska has done a good job of recruiting high-level talent, at least what they're projected to be out of high school. When you look at the stars and the measurables, and quite honestly, the peer group of teams recruiting a number of guys, Nebraska's done well to keep some in-state kids here and get some 500-mile radius kids to stay and go to Nebraska. They're not ready. And you've learned some tough lessons probably over the last 5 to 7 years of playing guys too early. Either they get dinged or they get a little hiccup in their confidence and they never reach their ceiling. In some instances, both things are true with the confidence and then the injury bug. So Nebraska has some things to look at with not only these bowl practices, but winter conditioning and then spring football. What kind of jump can the last 2 classes of offensive linemen make? As you look at it right now, you can't be wrong in projecting, okay, I think a Grant Bricks or X, Y, or Z is going to be ready. They may be. They may go win the spot. What you do have is a guy that's been in the program 2 years in Gunnar Gatula that was forced into action, and he has performed pretty well, and he's continued to get better as the years gone on.
I was going to say, you talked about Seton, but Gatula's another guy. I mean, he stepped in and performed pretty well.
We'll talk about a dire situation.
Second half of that Indiana game, had to step in and performed really well from that point on. Did he have his freshman moments? Absolutely. Who isn't going to have it? I mean, we all love Searles, but who could forget his game against Von Miller, his welcome to college football type moment where, again, he performed admirably, but you're going up against Von Miller. Like, that's a tough ask for a guy who's a redshirt freshman. Searles had that same moment, but you saw where his career went from there. That's kind of how I feel about Gunnar, is that Gunnar stepped into a tough spot this year, had some moments where did he learn some lessons? Absolutely. Is he going to learn from that and get better and be a high-level offensive lineman? Yeah, I also truly believe he's going to be really, really good someday for Nebraska because of those lessons that he learned this year. Is that a position where you're going to go into the portal and try to get an upgrade? I don't think Nebraska's in a place following a 6-6 season where any position is necessarily off the table aside from maybe quarterback. You have to look at upgrades everywhere. But do you feel fine about what you have in Gunnar? I think you do, similar to how you feel fine about what you have in Justin Evans. I think you like what you have in Lutovsky coming up. But after a 6-6 season, I don't think anyone can feel safe, again, aside from your quarterback, just because of the premium that's placed on that position. I don't think anyone can go into this offseason feeling safe. Like, you know what? We like what we have here. We don't need to even look at the portal options this offseason. That's just not the reality of college football right now.
Where are you going to get your depth pieces from? Or are you going to go portal for depth, or are you going to pray that your high school kids, now 2 years into the program, are going to be ready to be and come in and take some snaps, or at least fill a void for you short-term or long-term?
And there's going to be places where I talked about just now, you have to look at your options just about everywhere, but there's definitely positions I think the premium is going to be placed on finding depth or even finding some starters. You look at the safety spot in the back end of your defense. You look at the linebacker spot. You feel all right about the defensive line, you'd probably take another piece there. Right tackle is a big one that you circle because you haven't seen many of those guys. They're going to need to step up and potentially have a bigger role next season. Center as well, so you can keep Justin Evans at left guard. And I mean, do you like what Sam Sledge has put together from what we've heard from the outside? Yeah, you do. But are you going to go put all your chips into the middle of the table with that one guy and say, you know what, that's going to be our starter? No, you go check out your options.
You need two of each. I mean, you just do. You need a two deep that can play, and the drop off is minimal. And let's tell you about some of the names that have visited or are visiting right now. Fa'alili Ma'amoe is. Well, good enough.
Fa'amoe.
Fa'amoe.
There you go.
Fa'amoe.
Look at you.
So that's the left tackle from Washington State, and he is in Lincoln right now. A lot of snaps, a lot of talent, and a lot of miles that he has on the odometer.
Also, I'm glad that you dove into the deep end first with his name because I was bound to screw it up if I went first.
Well, I was just waiting for the correction.
Well, and if I went first, you would have been correcting me. That's
absolutely not, because I would have screwed it up worse than your first misstep. So, no. Fa'alili is looking at Nebraska today. He'll also look at LSU. LSU's got a couple of tackles that are off to the NFL, likely in the first round. You wonder about the Samoan/Polynesian connection with Donnie. I mean, that always helps, and that's been a real pipeline, quite frankly, for the Oregons and Washington States and Oregon States of the world. They've done well out into the Pacific, so Nebraska will try and impress, see if it's a fit. You had Keegan Trost that checked things out. He's the right tackle from Wake Forest. Looking at Nebraska. So immediately we've circled that right tackle spot as well. He's also going to get a gander at Mississippi State. You have Andrew Marshall. He's a defensive back from Idaho, but he's also really talented return man. You want that. We've talked about Dom Gaitis, the center from Michigan. And he's got 18 games under his belt, 5 starts, won the job, got dinged, lost the job. You've got a bidding war for World. A&M and Oregon, they have their own Brinks truck, so you wonder about that.
It should be noted with that recruitment, Oregon picked up the commitment of an offensive tackle from Texas State today.
Okay, so maybe they're going a different direction.
Something to consider.
Yeah, and if you're Nebraska, you'd like to take both. So Fadamoe and Trost are the two that you'd like to land. Best case scenario, you get both. Reality, maybe you get one. Possibility, high possibility, you don't get either. If Trost is looking at Mississippi State and Fa'alili is looking at LSU. Another name to look at, and this is a kid that was out of Arizona, really good edge rusher from KU, and DJ Warner. He's looked at Missouri and SMU already, see if things trend the right way for maybe a Nebraska visit. But 3 of those 5 pieces on the offensive line we've touched on. Nebraska for sure kicking tires on. We've talked about World. We told you about Fa'alili, and then there's Trost. So there's 3 offensive tackles Nebraska's been aggressive and in on. They've got to land, or you'd like to land one of those 3 if you're Nebraska. Got to pay the right guy. You got to get production for what you're paying. And all along the way, you're still developing what you've got in the cupboard right now, Gatula and beyond at the right tackle. What's your interior look like? And you supplement while not wanting to lose anyone else to the portal down the road. You want to keep and develop and then just kind of plug and play at some point. Mike Babcock is with us. We'll get things rolling with Babbers next. It's Hail Varsity with you on a Wednesday.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhody. We welcome in Mr. Husker Football. It's Mike Babcock with Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, happy holidays, bud. How you doing?
Happy holidays to you all.
Well,
okay, my head's spinning a little bit, though. All this talk about offensive line.
Well, you know, I figured it's a premium spot. You have a good O-line. You have a good football team. It's very simple, and you've seen it for a lot of years with some of Nebraska's elite teams, Mike, with their offensive line play, just how good it's been. And now you get to go shopping, just like the Christmas season, right? You go and you pick and you hope Santa brings it. Nebraska has the ability to do something about that with not only fit in offense and quarterback and O-line coach and coordinator, but just, Mike, Nebraska's resources, I don't want to say unmatched, but very, very competitive. It really kind of comes down to picking I guess the right gift, doesn't it? Making sure it all fits in and measures up if you're going to spend the money.
Yeah, and I think that you have to have some success in the transfer portal and the offensive line probably. Otherwise, I think you're in a position where you're going to have to play some young guys maybe before they're ready to play. And in this day and age of the transfer portal, young guys in their mind probably think they're ready to play. Mm-hmm. And if they don't get the opportunity, you run the risk of losing them. So how do you balance that? I think that's one of the things that the offensive line coach has to consider is, do these young players, and there's 4 offensive linemen in the recruiting class, how do these young players look at the concept of, I need to be developed, I need to have time to be able to step in, or do they come in thinking, I'm ready to roll, and if I don't roll here, I'll find some other place to roll. That's the thing that you have to consider, I think. I don't know.
Mike, based on what you saw this past season with Nebraska's offensive line, obviously they're losing some guys due to graduation as guys are out of eligibility, but what did you make of their performance last year? And I guess in terms of an upgrade, how bad do the Huskers need an upgrade on the offensive line whenever you compare it to other positions? If you only have a certain amount of money in the pot, how much do you think should be going to the offensive line based on what you saw last year?
Well, I thought the offensive line got better as the season went on. I do believe that. I think there was improvement there, but you lost some guys. And I think, this is just me again, but I think that you've got to make a commitment in the offensive line, because I think that's where success starts with the guys up front. Can they get the job done? And if they can't get the job done, then it influences who's playing quarterback, who's catching the ball, who's running the ball. All those things depend on the guys up front, the offensive line.
Mike, it felt like you nailed it with the commitment to the offensive line. It felt like the O-line and the play calling, not just from a success and a points standpoint, but they were on the same page. When Dana Holgorsen got here, there was some faith, and you saw the offensive line the final 3 games. There were moments against USC. They looked really good, quite frankly, all game long against Wisconsin, aside from those first couple of drives where Wisconsin got pressure, and then Nebraska either played better or made some adjustments to keep a clean pocket for Dillon. And then the run game got going, and then you saw the run game do some nice things at points were at a premium setting at Iowa City. But, I mean, Nebraska's final 3 showings of this regular season with data, the play calling, and leaning on that run game, not having it be an afterthought or afraid to commit to it, was really the difference in that jump. And you have to imagine moving forward with Dana here for 2 years or beyond, if you're a Nebraska fan, you're hoping that it can really be in sync for the first time in a while.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. And I think that, again, I said this all the time, it starts up front, and you have to have some form of a running game to be successful in the Big Ten, or to really be successful anywhere, I think. You've got to be able to at least have the threat that you can run the ball before you can take advantage of the talented passer that you have in Dylan Raiola. But you've got to be able to run the ball, show that you can do that. And if you can run the ball and open up some things, then you've got a great advantage, I think, with a quarterback like Dylan Raiola with a year's worth of experience. And if they have bring in some receivers that they're comfortable with.
Based on everything you know right now, Mike, Nebraska's roster as it stands, do you have more confidence in 2025 with Nebraska's rushing attack, with Emmett Johnson coming back and likely 3 of your offensive linemen coming back for more? Or do you have more confidence in Dylan Raiola taking a step in year 2 and Nebraska's offense being able to air it out? Which side of the the offensive attack do you trust more headed into 2025 as it stands right now?
Well, I think you can't separate the two. I think you have to feel like you have and it was good that Emmett Johnson decided not to go into the transfer portal, but you lost Dante Dowdell, the short yardage guy, the guy that scored 11 touchdowns, whatever. You've got to find somebody that can do that. But I think that you're going to see a significant jump in Dylan Raiola, because I think he's a very focused person when it comes to learning his position. And I think that you're going to see the effects of that in the second year. So I wouldn't pick one or the other, but I think that you're going to see the potential for improvement both ways if you've got an offensive line that can get the job done up front.
Mike, what does the bowl game mean to you? How are you viewing it?
Boy, the bowl game is going to be interesting because you're losing some guys, and who's going to be playing where, and what's that going to be. But I think the bottom line is you got to win that game. You got to finish with a winning record, I think, for this season to look at this season and say, yeah, it was a positive. They got to a bowl game, A, and B, they won the bowl game. And I think that's really important. I think you've got to win the game.
It's Mike Babcock with us here. And Mike, quickly here, I do want to go to Husker volleyball. Thursday night, Final Four. Impressive performance last weekend, especially against Wisconsin. I know John Cook wasn't overjoyed with the performance on Friday night. They turned it around in a huge performance against the Badgers. What do you make of round 2 against Penn State? Nebraska dropped the first in Happy Valley just a couple of weeks ago. What do you make of round 2? What do you make of Nebraska's chances in the Final Four as well? In a season that, as Mitch said yesterday, kind of feels like the team of destiny based on what happened last season and their motivation to make another run at it.
Yeah, I think that I would agree with that. The one thing I think about is this is an extremely talented Final Four. I mean, man, this is you couldn't pick it any differently with all these number ones in there, the number one ranked teams in each of the divisions. But I think that I'm figuring Nebraska is going to come out of this thing as with a trophy. A championship trophy. I'm really impressed with how aggressive they were. And 3 times against Wisconsin this season, all 3-0. That says a lot because that's a good Wisconsin team.
Mike, to stick with volleyball, what about this Husker team do you circle? What sticks out to you about them? Is it the depth of talent? Is it the mental focus? Is it chemistry? I mean, what do you circle that is kind of their defining trait?
I think all those things, but when I watch the matches, the digs, it's incredible to me. Like that shot didn't go down. They got that. Yeah. They got to that ball. They got it up. They got it back. It's just amazing to me how they're able to do that. And I think that you have to have all the elements that you talked about, the chemistry and the players knowing what it is they have to do and then being able to do it. I mean, the digs, it's amazing to me. How do you keep the ball up and keep going? That's a tremendous aspect of that team, I think.
Babbers College Football Playoff gets rolling. Indiana, Notre Dame, Friday night. That'll do a monster number in South Bend. You've got Clemson, Texas as part of your triple header. SMU, Penn State. That's going to be great. And, of course, Tennessee, Rocky Top's going to invade the horseshoe, I think. What game are you looking most forward to?
Notre Dame, Indiana.
Yeah.
I think I'm really impressed with the way Notre Dame responded to that loss to Northern Illinois. And, I would consider it Notre Dame a possible championship game participant. I really think that Notre Dame is good. But having said that, I want to see that Indiana-Notre Dame thing because Notre Dame could be in for a surprise. That Indiana team is pretty good.
They are. And, I mean, they are in true Signetti form. They're not blinking. They're chirping a little bit. And the state bragging rights. How will South Bend stay afloat if they lose at home to Indiana?
Not good.
There's not going to be a drop of alcohol left at linebackers if they lose to Indiana in football.
Yes, this would be not a good situation. But again, Indiana's pretty good, and you better be ready to play 4 quarters. You better be the strongest team in the 4th quarter. That's what I'm guessing. When you hold up those 4 fingers, it better matter.
I tell you what, if they drop that game, the offering plate on Sunday morning mass around the country is going to be for Notre Dame's NIL.
Well, if you're the priest,
we need to buy some more players that are better.
If you're the priest, you're not pitching the give till it hurts. It's the holiday season. It's, brother, we need a new secondary. We need a new edge rusher. That running game's a little sus. Come on now, give till it hurts. There you go.
Yeah, well, but any team that loses in the playoffs is going to have that probably. Certainly the higher ranked teams, if they don't show up and play, it's going to be that way.
Babbers, will holler at you next time. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
There he is.
Happy holidays.
Mike Babcock with us here on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Good stuff from Mike Babcock. If you caught part of that or want to hear it again or you need to catch up on it, Hail Varsity Podcast. Hail Varsity Radio is what you search for. Give us a rating, good, bad, ugly. We love the feedback. And check out the segments you want to hear. Also on Hail Varsity YouTube. Programming note, our side project, the Average Joe Sports Show, Wednesday live tonight. We'll have a live Average Joe show at 7:30 on YouTube, so check that out. Open phones till 5 here at 489-1240 with Hail Varsity Radio. I want to get back into what Mike said when it comes to that balancing act, specifically with the players you recruit versus the players you portal and how you keep who you want to keep. We'll dive into that in a moment. I do want to get our starting five shout-outs. I'm a bad dude. I meant to get that handled in segment one like we always do. We ran out of time, so let us give our starting five shout-outs and nods. Jeff is in. Jeff, appreciate you. Grateful Red is in. Arlo is here. Arlo, thank you. Andrew in. NASCAR Eric, appreciate you. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, is here. Mike says, Shamalama Ding Dong, here it is. I love it. Little Animal House reference there. Good song, Mike. Wrestling Oranges is here. Great Red Shark says, howdy. Mike from Cali, good to have you. He's waiting on a tackle to commit. Roger is in. Cliff in from Florida. Cliff, good to spend time with you. Black Hills Brennan, music to our ears. Prime rib is secured. We need to get out. I know we couldn't do it because of the College World Series, but I think the next golf trip needs to be out to the Black Hills and go swing the clubs with Black Hills Brennan.
I think we could do some road shows out there, too.
I would love to do that. I would love to get to Deadwood. That would be all right. I will just, here's my money at the old blackjack table.
No, that's the thing, is you pay for the trip that way.
Sure. Well, you could. You are the most calculated of all gamblers when we're up at Ameristar. Elijah walks in, puts a $100 down, wins, walks away. About an hour and a half later, walks in, puts a $100 down. It's a winner at the blackjack table, walks away. When I was up there last time hanging out with Nate, dear buddy from college, we made a night of it, and I was up and I didn't have the discipline, as they say, to just walk away once you're up a little bit. So I'll have to reenact that in a positive way. Roadshow Friday coming up December 27th, 4 to 6 Hail Varsity at Ameristar Council Bluffs Casino right outside Amerisports. So we want to see you out there. So we get you ready for Nebraska and Boston College on the 28th. Good to have Great Red Shark in. His comment here when it comes to Dylan and Donnie, we've never been better positions to bring in folks from the Pacific. Last recruiting class is evidence. That's a great point. And I want to get into that balancing act, the young guys and the portal options. It's never been more important than it is right now to have belief, trust, confidence in your position coach, okay? And to a man, and we've been around a lot of programs, we've been around a lot of Nebraska programs, specifically different regimes, and Nebraska has got a guy that the guys would kill for in Donnie Raiola. That position group, that room. Do you always like the answer you're going to get? Probably not, but you know it's the truth. The guy's super intense, and he's just a worker. He's working to get you better. He's working to put a lot of tools in your tool belt against some of these beasts you see week in and week out from the Big Ten. The Big Ten's known for a lot of things. It's known for weather. It's known for no weeks off. It's also known for defensive lines, right? And with Nebraska and what they have, I think there's trust, fellas. I think there's a lot of trust from the younger guys. There's also trust from some of these portal options. If they, one of the deciding factors, don't kid yourself, if there's a kind of a, well, why'd you commit interview that'll be out there with some of the great recruiting services sites, it's going to be, well, I like Coach Donnie. I mean, that's going to be part of the answer. Why did you pick Nebraska? So, well, I like what Coach Donnie's doing. I like the offense. I want to play with Dylan, da-da-da-da-da. I mean, that'll be part of this formula. But I think Nebraska could be in good position to be a different type of program. It's not that you're not going to lose people. You might. Some guys may transfer out because they just say, I can't crack the lineup here. That's understandable. But I think I think a lot of these guys, they're going to look at Gatula and say, okay, he got me developed, forced into action. And, the arrow's pointing the right way. The balancing act Nebraska could be in a better position is to keep these guys here. So you're actually going to have some depth and some depth of talent on that offensive line moving forward.
And what I think is interesting, I think this kind of gets back to some of the portal targets we're seeing here this cycle along the offensive line as well. But I think it's interesting the type of guy that Donnie Raiola seems to connect best with. Because you look through the guys that he has recruited and the guys he has along his offensive line right now, there's like the two themes you sense there. One, a lot of Polynesian kids, and then a lot of rural Midwestern kids. Mm-hmm. And those seem to be, I know you can't necessarily look at trends.
You don't see diva.
No, you don't.
Right?
You don't.
You see a mentality.
And again, correlation is not necessarily causation. It's not to say that that's the only people that he connects with are rural Midwestern kids and your Polynesian kids, but I think there's enough of a trend there to know, okay, the guys that seem to pick Nebraska because of that relationship with Donovan Raiola, what they think they can be along Nebraska's offensive lines, tend to come from one of those two locales, which I just think is interesting, and it's I am partly evaluating whenever I talk about you have to build a quick relationship with guys in the portal, and guys in the portal are going to pick Nebraska if they're an offensive lineman, in part because of Donovan Raiola. And I think that's just kind of an interesting thing to look at. He seems to connect better with those two types of kids.
Well, why? What's your motive? Is your motive to play and get to Sunday? Hopefully. Is your motive to make a bag of money? Possibly. But, where's it rank on the hierarchy? Is it to make a bag of money and maybe I play, maybe I don't? Or is it to get better and be the best player I can be? And do I believe Donnie Raiola is going to get me there? So, yeah, he's not going to blow smoke and pretty much no nonsense. And I think knowing where you stand and here's where you need to get better and I'm going to push you to get better are all things that can be big. Shane is in, and yes, Shane, the portal this time of year is stupid. Shane, you are preaching, brother. It is difficult for the world of college football. Kobe is in. He's made his way into the stream. You're always welcome to check us out, Hail Varsity YouTube. Chopper76 is in. Steve is here. I don't know if it's I don't think it's that guy, that Steve Peterson, but okay, he says I'm not that guy. I mean, we've Ed Foley's visited the last few times. Tony is here from Shelby. Good to have you. Brian is in. How many of these visitors today will we get? Trost, Marshall, also, Mississippi State's defensive tackle Gabriel Moore. Nebraska's at least got him here. Brian, we'll see if Nebraska can close. I would hope for at least a 50% hit rate. I don't know that that'll happen, but that should be the target.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Evan Bland coming up in 10 minutes. Omaha World Herald, 489-1240. Reminder about your friends with the Omaha Supernovas coming up here. The season gets kicked off. Novas Nation for 2025. Don't miss a championship celebration like no other. And you're invited out January 10th at CHI as the season gets going here against the Atlanta Vibe, and be a part of that championship banner as they raise it up at the CHI Center, and get ready to watch world-class talent. That's Olympians, that's NCAA champions, that's All-Americans, plus the pro debuts of local standouts and stars from right here in the volleyball state, the great state of Nebraska. Tickets on sale now, and just head over to supernovas.com and be a part of history today. So get that circled for your early 2025. Friday, January 10th, the opener with CHI, the spot to be, and get your Omaha Supernova season tickets or your single game tickets. Line up and sign up, supernovas.com. Elijah, we're doing a quick in-pencil rundown here of that offensive line room where you've got kind of off to the left with Turner Corcoran and Teddy Prohaska try to get back and be healthy. Do they want to give it another rodeo? You've got Gatula that's logging time at left tackle. You've got Evans at left guard. Center's a question mark. You've got Lutoski at right guard. You're looking at right tackle. And here's the names and the spots. Segrin at tackle, Bricks at tackle, Knudsen at tackle. You've got Canuck at guard. You've got Tamua at guard. Machachek is at guard. And then Gibson Pyle at guard. Sledge, your center / interior offensive lineman. And then we've got those portal names. I'm sure we're forgetting a couple names here and there, but that's a large part of the last two classes you've recruited. And, you've watered, you've fed. You fed and watered that offensive line room. Where are they at? Because we know that they've been getting the opportunity to get reps and develop.
And two guys that are ultimate question marks that you haven't mentioned, Teddy Prohaska, Turner Corcoran, with their return from injury. Mm-hmm. They're kind of ultimate wild cards in terms of could they step in and
where do you slot them? What's their level?
With all their experience playing football, could you slot them in and they're great next year? Theoretically, yes. Could you also maybe not see them play another snap of football because of their injury history? That's also very much a possibility. Like, you have the two wild extremes of what their football futures could look like. We don't know what their football futures look like, but I think if you're Nebraska's coaching staff, you have to be under the assumption that they're not going to be playing any more football for you. I hope to see them again. I think they both, Corcoran seemingly took a pretty big jump this past offseason with the ability to stick and stay at left tackle, work that position all offseason and not be thrown around as he had been through much of his Husker career, moving from left to right to guard to back to tackle, back to guard. You got to stick and stay at a position all offseason long. Stepped in and did well until he had the injury. You don't know what those guys are going to be, so you have to go into the assumption that they're not, and at which case I think you feel good about Gatula at left tackle. Would you maybe like an upgrade? Sure, if you're with Gatula, I think based on what I saw this year, I'm happy to roll with Gatula as left tackle. I'd say the same about Justin Evans at guard. You'd like to get a center so you don't have to move Evans back to guard, because I like what he's put on the field at left guard, especially as a puller. There's a reason Nebraska ran right with those power and counter looks a lot. Then you get right guard. You'd probably want an upgrade. Right tackle is another huge question mark. We don't know who's going to slide in there.
Uncle Larry was apparently in first. Skyler, Elijah and I talked about this after the show, the $12.5 million alleged offer to Dylan to leave. Well, he's ready for New York.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? We're not pointing you yet.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhody, and Ed Foley back in the stream chat on Hail Varsity YouTube, imploring that I talk nice to him this Christmas. Hey, Ed, we've always had fun conversations about different parts of the state of Nebraska. There's no animosity here. We welcome in Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World Herald, at Evan Bland, OWH on Twitter. So, Evan, Elijah's got a few last-minute things to get when it comes to his Christmas shopping. Sounds like Justice is getting it handled. I've taken care of my immediate family. Evan Bland, is he on the trail, or are you set and ready to go for next week?
Well, I'll tell you, it's one of the beautiful things of marriage is, my wife does a good amount of that stuff, and then I'm kind of the big idea guy, right? Like I'm the big picture guy, and then she tends to execute most of that, or just buy something better. So that has tended to work out for us in the past. But I'm usually good for an item or two, and if it's sports related or something, all the better.
So do you you're able to go get her what she wants, right, for Christmas, for the holiday season, or is that part of the big picture? Hey, I think you'd like this. Do you want to go pick it out? I mean, how do you execute here?
I feel like I'm paired up well because my wife doesn't necessarily want a bunch of gifts. She's like, hey, what if we bought a couch, or what if we went on a trip? Like, that's kind of how we have tended to do that stuff. So something that we could kind of share together, because and the reverse is true too. She doesn't. I've said, hey, I don't need anything as a gift. Let's pool our money and do something else kind of different. So I don't know. That's just kind of how I was wired. Is like try to keep the stress level down on Christmas and enjoy time with family and friends, and that's just been kind of our rhythm. But certainly, that's I know everybody has their own kind of situation there.
Well, whenever the presents are purchased, who does the wrapping? Is that a collaborative effort as well?
Oh no! I'll hang out and be a conversationalist.
I'll pour a drink.
Yeah, I'll pour a drink, play some music. No, it's her. I did it, when I was in college, up to college, and it was bad, man. It was like a second grader. You put like the comics from your newspaper and too much tape, right? Like, that's what I was always told, is like, if you wrap a present well, you need like maybe 2 small pieces of tape to close the ends. And I'm like going through a half spool of the stuff, and it's just like, all right, I'm not enjoying this. The people opening it aren't enjoying this. And so that's the beauty of the gift bag. That's, you pivot, you go to the gift bag if the wrapping is tripping you up. Pro tip.
Evan has analyzed all of this. I love it.
And Evan, we have Skylar chime in on the stream. He just wants to say that all guys think that they're the big idea guys. So
I didn't say they were good ideas, but there are ideas.
How about we get a new couch? Boom! I love it. Evan, let's talk about that gift that is the portal. Some see it as a gift. Some see it as a curse. Nebraska's being aggressive and proactive here, and quite the list of tackles running through, making their way to Lincoln. What are some of the names that are intriguing to you here? And just ballpark it for me. What do you think can separate, or why do you think Nebraska can be an even more effective portal team this second go-round?
Well, I think they can be better because they have the resources to do it now. I mean, you're starting to operate now with prospective revenue sharing, negotiations and talks, and they're going to be right at that limit of $20.5 million next year, and so are other teams. So you have that. You have the NIL piece that remains strong, seemingly. You have the fact that you have a young quarterback. I think that draws the attention of a lot of players, especially on the offensive side. I mean, that's pretty appealing to, if you're a left tackle coming in, to say, hey, block for Dylan Raiola. And if this thing takes off and people are watching his tape, I mean, the tape of those guys blocking him is going to be pretty much out there and well circulated too. So, I mean, a number of guys are coming in. I mean, Keegan Troust from Wake Forest has had a visit scheduled. A Washington State tackle, I'll butcher his name, Falili Famo, is somebody who has a visit set up with Nebraska and LSU. Isaiah World has Nebraska in his final 3. He's already come and visited. So, I mean, those are guys who are pretty highly sought after in the portal. Dominic Giudice from Michigan has visited as well, and that's a guy who will make a decision at some point. And as we've learned, like, if you're going to take a tackle out of the portal, a quality one, I mean, it's going to be expensive. So clearly it's been a priority for Nebraska, as has defensive line, as has receiver, as has the specialist positions that they just shored up with a long snapper and a punter. But it does seem like, right now, offensive tackle is probably the one that's going to cost you the most, and they continue to bring guys in. So they've been aggressive with it, and it's one of those sort of musical chairs situations where you spread the net wide among guys you feel good about, and then you get a commitment, maybe 2, if you feel like you need that added depth, and you go from there. But I do think just the fact that these guys are visiting and considering Nebraska tells you just how serious the Huskers are about adding to that spot and the commitment financially they're willing to make.
Evan, what would you put a percentage on Nebraska not just landing one but two? Could they get Trost and Fatma Moe, the tackle from Washington State? Could they really nail both of them?
I mean, it's hard to say. Like, these things are so fluid. I mean, you see all kinds of examples, including at Nebraska, where a guy visits, and then there are other visits that are set up from players at the same position, and then there's a commitment, and those other visits don't happen. So right now, those are the visits that are set up or have happened, and that maybe could change if somebody commits, and suddenly, the offered price for that second guy is maybe not the same as it would be for that first guy. So my sense is you probably would get one of those top guys, and then maybe you would get somebody who's a little less proven, who is maybe a little bit would command a little bit less in terms of rev share dollars or NIL. But I think they can get one, and whether that's World or Trost or somebody else. I mean, again, it's clear that motivation is out there for Nebraska. So the portal's open for another 10 days here. Guys don't have to make decisions in that time, but they're finishing up a pretty busy visit stretch. So when you are talking about the list of candidates, I mean, that list usually is comprised of the guys who have gotten to campus. So they're already, 4 or 5 at this point. I think that puts them in a good situation to get one, and then maybe you revisit that position when the dust settles into January with some guys who are still in the portal at that time.
Evan, with Fa'amoe, I think I got that right.
Well done.
He's going to be coveted in the portal. I know he's supposed to be in Nebraska here this week to check out campus. But again, Nebraska is going to be facing a tough battle for his services. If he does come to Nebraska, where would he rank among the hardest names to pronounce in Husker history, in your opinion?
Boy, that's a good one.
Prince Will.
Prince Will, Uman that would be up there. I remember, I'm old enough to remember freshman Ndamukong Suh tripped up a lot of people. I remember, I think somebody called him in Domkong or something, like as a freshman before he really got rolling. So, I think it'd be pretty high up there when you start introducing hyphens and a lot of vowels. I think that can trip people up. So sure, it's a tough one. I don't know. I'd have to look into that a little bit, but it'd certainly be up there.
Seems like a front page story for you someday. The hardest names in Husker history to pronounce.
IGC's got to be up there.
Well,
Garcia Castaneda?
There's I've heard so many announcers get that wrong.
We got Eric chiming in saying Freedom Akumuladun.
Yeah, Freedom.
That's
it was
good.
Always just Freedom. The first name, like,
Prince Amukamara.
Prince, Amukamara. It took about 7 years to learn that for some of us, and we finally got it handled. And we always do the Hail Varsity spelling bee. We always have the old offensive lineman from Nebraska about 20 years ago. Not Dan Veely-Waltrip, but the other guy, Tony Finotti. Finotti's.
Oh, yeah.
That's Finotti's last name. Trying to get that spelled correctly for those that were participating was always a bit of a curveball. Evan, I want to just talk. We spent some time on this. How do you like Nebraska's depth and options? And I mean the younger guys in that offensive line room. When we talk about that balancing act of, all right, the young guys that have been grinding to get ready versus going portal and take care of the immediate need. What's your take on the development and just the options you have that we haven't really seen from Nebraska on the offensive line?
Yeah, I don't know that we'll see a ton of those guys in the bowl game, and maybe we will. I haven't heard of anyone who's opting out at this point. I would expect Bryce Benhart to play and Ben Scott to play, but if they don't, or even just into the future, we've already seen Grant Gatula. I thought he's acquitted himself really well, kind of coming into spot duty as he did. Grant Bricks, of course, was a big recruiting win a year ago. He's been behind the scenes, getting bigger and better, and we'll see where that goes. Sam Sledge is another interior guy who's going to be a big part of what they do in the future. Tyler Kanak has been already on the two deep. We haven't seen a ton of him, but how that kind of goes. Brock Knutson, Jason Machachok. You can kind of go down the list of some guys. Machachok, in terms of hard to say. That'd be up there too. And then, you get Teddy Prohaska back, and Gibson Pyle was someone who was mentioned at times this year too. So I thought that 24 recruiting class that they brought in, the headliners generally, the strength of that class was the offensive line. And so the luxury that they've had is they have had older guys this year that have allowed most of those guys, those new freshmen and redshirt freshmen, to stay behind the scenes. And so you'll have some familiar faces back next year. I mean, Justin Evans comes back, and you would think Gatula would continue to have a role and so on. But you are going to see sort of that next wave of offensive linemen take hold, and I'm sure Nebraska wouldn't mind the chance to maybe get some of their feet wet in New York City. But if it doesn't happen, then I do think it's certainly going to be one of the more major storylines as Nebraska gets into spring and you start sizing up what that team's going to look like next year.
It's Evan Bland with us here. And Evan, with all the names that we've heard in the portal this week, what are the one or two top names that you think would be big if Nebraska could reel them in?
Well, I mean, one of the offensive linemen, I think Isaiah World, the fact that he has Nebraska in his final three, that's significant. That would be a big deal. Isaiah Hunter, the receiver from Cal, would be a big deal. That's a guy, I believe, who has multiple years of eligibility left. So you're not talking about a one-year guy, but potentially a multi-year weapon there. And really, at some point, they're going to need to figure out a backup quarterback as well. I mean, when you talk about Daniel Kalen transferring to Virginia, Heinrich Harburg shifting over to tight end, they may or may not have Jalen Gramstad next year, depending on what he decides to do for a fifth or sixth final year. You're going to have to find somebody in the portal, and obviously that's not somebody that's kind of a harder sell when you've got Dylan Raiola entrenched as a starter. So, the fact that they had in the Purdue guy, Marcos Davilas, is interesting. He was a former four-star prospect himself, so you do need to figure that room out as well, just in case something happens to your main guy. So I think those are kind of the positions that Nebraska's continued to target. They'll probably add another defensive lineman or two as well, given the attrition they had. Adding Williams Winery was a big deal. That's somebody who you would figure would factor immediately into what they want to do next year. But I guess I would say an impact offensive tackle, and if you can get a receiver like Hunter who can come in and give you multiple years, I mean, that's probably a good place to start.
Evan, on the running back front here, about 45 seconds, just some of the names. Do you think there's a decent replacement out there for Nebraska losing Dowdell?
Well, I think what they're going to have to do is find somebody to fill the role specific to what Dowdell offered. I mean, the reason that he is in the portal is because other teams are really valuing his ability to finish in the red zone. I mean, how many times when Nebraska was inside the five were they able to punch it in because of Dowdell? I mean, he was very consistent in that way. 12 rushing touchdowns, that pops on the stat page, and I think in the video study as well. So I don't know that Nebraska has that guy, that next guy, as that sort of the hammer on their roster at this point. So I think you're probably looking for somebody with a similar skill set, somebody who's big-bodied, who's able to get those tough yards, and can be something close to a given on sort of those third and short type of situations.
Evan, have a good weekend. Thank you for the time today.
Appreciate it, guys. See ya.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World Herald. His You can find that segment, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play when you search Hail Varsity Radio. Hail Varsity YouTube, also where you can check out the show. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhody. Excuse me. So, good story here from Sam McEwen, and it lays out a question and kind of an outline of the Big Ten teams in the college football playoff, not just how they got there, but what they are as a program. And Sam's story asked the question here, what template can Nebraska be as a football program? Who are you most like? Who do you want to be like? And, what are some of the crossover or similarities that Nebraska football is or has compared to the teams that have found their way into the promised land? So I invite you to read that, and it's pretty fascinating to look at. So I'm the last guy to talk playoff with Nebraska football because of just where the team is at. And they're 6-6. They're inconsistent. They're trying, right, from a recruiting and a portal and an infrastructure and a financing standpoint to be a big dog, but you got to go win on the field, and I know they're working on that, and we'll see where things shake out a week from Friday against Boston College is either a springboard or another kick below the belt, to end a season on, but. You look at these teams, guys, with Nebraska, and you look at what Oregon is, you look at Ohio State, you look at Penn State, you look at Indiana. What crossover, what mesh do you see, if any, in Nebraska football? Who does Nebraska most remind you of, or who do you think they can be moving forward? Because Matt Rhule, his plan is to be a team that is in the upper echelon of the Big Ten. By doing that, that's going to be your inroad to the college football playoff. By doing one, you'll be the other, or at least be in contention for. You're not going to get 4 teams from the Big Ten in every year. Now, if you expand the playoff, you would think you're top 4. There's going to be some years where you'll knock on that door for 5 Big Ten teams. There's going to be some years where it's just 3, maybe 2. It really just depends on how top-heavy and how deep your league is. This year has been pretty fascinating. Aside from Purdue, you've had teams that are 10 through 14. That's kind of where Nebraska is slated. Challenge or scare your top teams, okay? Your middle class is the Washingtons and Michigans, just a year removed from the college football playoff themselves. And guys, you're just a year away. You are a roster flip. You are a player 2, 3 away from hitting the jackpot like Indiana has. Now, what I don't know is how sustainable is Indiana. What you want if you're Nebraska is to be a team that wins big ball games, defends home field, and above all, you're a team that can go compete. And they're working on that part of it here, consistency. Penn State is really good against teams that they're favored to beat. Nebraska has been favored a lot over the years. Nebraska's not always been good as the favorite. Case in point, UCLA this year, right? You're a touchdown plus favorite, and that thing went sideways. Now, you look at Penn State and James Franklin, the guy's 1-14 against the top 5, okay? That isn't good, but he also survived an overtime at USC. He also survived a trip to Minnesota this year, 2 major spots where that's a 1-score game, that's on the road, that's a game that the opponent has circled against you, and they found a way. Penn State spits out NFL guys. The last 5 drafts, you're talking around 21, 22 Penn State players. Oregon, they're right around the 14 number of defensive folks drafted. Ohio State's put 30-plus guys in. They're known for quarterback and wide receivers. If you're Nebraska, I think you're going to want to be known for your defensive line moving forward. You're going to want to be known for Dylan Raiola and a guy that went to the NFL. That's a plant the flag statement opportunity if you're Nebraska, right? And with Dana coming here, I mean, it's going to be a glamorous spot potentially for some wide receivers, or at least in this system, in this offense. What program do you think Nebraska is closest to right now? And I once upon a time, I'd say Oregon just because of the innovation. And they're also similar to Oregon from the turnstile of coaches. Oregon's been through 4, but they've always found the next really good coach. They've not fallen off. Like they had the Helfrich situation post Chip Kelly, but after that it was Mario, and right now it's Lanning. So they've completely upgraded even as they've moved on from coaches, or coaches has moved on from them. Nebraska's not always done that in their 5 or 6 swings at the plate when it comes to coaches. You feel like right now, Redwine 65 chimes in and says Penn State level would be good, and I agree. You're putting guys in the NFL. You're winning games you're supposed to, and you're in that upper echelon. You're not able to defeat the top team, but you're not always getting blown out and embarrassed by the top team. I mean, you lost by 3 this year if you're Penn State at home to Ohio State. You lost by a touchdown to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. So Penn State's doable. I'll say that Penn State's recruiting area is vast and great, but that's not seemed to bother Nebraska either. Penn State develops pretty well too.
Yeah, and that's probably the correct answer for this question as it's presented. But I think if there's any college football team that Nebraska, I think, is trying to emulate with their rebuild, it's none of the Big Ten teams. It's probably Texas. That's the school I look at in terms of Matt Rule, the rebuild that he would like to emulate. Because look at how Texas did it.
Lay it out there. How do you think Texas did?
Sarkisian in year 1 missed a bowl game. He had Hudson Card at quarterback. Things weren't all that great offensively. You had some good pieces. Bijan Robinson is the one you circle as probably being the best piece of that Texas team. He had a great kicker in Cameron Dickers. That's where things go a little bit awry. But things don't go well for you that year. What do? You go hit the portal, and you bring in a guy that had already been committed to you and reclassified to go spend a half of a season at Ohio State pretty much with Quinn Ewers. You bring him in, and you start your rebuild from the quarterback position. And that's what I look at as I compare it to Nebraska. Texas, that first year with Ewers as a starting quarterback, didn't have a great defense. They gave Alabama a hell of a scare, but they also lost to some teams that they had no business losing to that season.
Kansas.
Kansas was all right that season, but they did beat them. But they lost to Okie State, Kansas State, TCU. That was the magical TCU season where they went and played for the national championship and got killed. You lost to Texas Tech on the road in overtime. Lost some games that U.S. Texas should not be losing. But they had their basis for the future. Speed at the wide receiver position.
Good lines.
Their offensive line was building. Their defense wasn't great, but it was building. And you're able to use that as your springboard to say, hey, we got a great quarterback here. They were able to look at a lot of the great recruits down in Texas and say, we're building something here, and also we got a boatload of money to pay you if you come play here as well. And I think that's what we see with Nebraska a little bit this offseason, where you found the quarterback. You know Dylan Raiola is going to be the guy. You have a running back I think you feel confident with in Emmett. You did make a change at offensive coordinator to try to bring the most out of those guys, but it's similar in that you're going to try to go get speed and talent at the skill position places. Let your offensive line keep developing behind the scenes, getting better and better. And then defensively, Texas, they didn't necessarily have it that season that Quinn Ewers began starting, but they've built it since then. They've built their defense around a mean, physical, and athletic defensive line. The defensive line has started it all for those Texas teams defensively over the past couple seasons.
The headline, fellas, might be the quarterback, but your cement is those lines of scrimmage, Justice.
The big difference with Texas, and I'll let you jump in, Justice, is that Texas is able to consistently bring in top 5 recruiting classes because of the money and because of where they're located.
Oregon and Ohio State, they are top 5, top 3 in recruiting classes. Penn State's kind of in the teen, occasionally a top 10. And Nebraska feels like a teen to 20s recruiting area.
Yeah, and I think when you look at this Penn State, like I think Matt Rule being a Penn State alum and like a Penn State guy, like he always, like subconsciously he's going to look back at where your roots are, right? And I think he's looked at that program, and they're built under James Franklin on physicality. They run the football. They have consistently great defense, and they know what area they recruit. And they really kickstarted this resurgence by bringing in a 5-star quarterback with Drew Aller with real talent. So I think he subconsciously looks at that Penn State model and says, I think I can replicate that, but let me put some tweaks to it. Let me get some speed on the outside with some of these receivers I'm bringing in. Let me get a 5-star quarterback who's got some real flexibility, and let me build through the trenches.
No, you got to be prioritizing the trenches, get some depth there, and Aller's a great point, and you want, you hope, if you're a Nebraska fan, the career of Dylan goes the Aller route, as in, all right, you've had some really good moments, you've had some struggles, but you've kept on swinging. And he made his announcement this week that, hey, I'm coming back for my 5th year. And while that may not be a want for the Raiola crew, I mean, he wants to get to the NFL, totally get it, but have your best season, your last season. Be ready, right? Go out on a high level. But no, Penn State makes the most sense, is maybe what you can aspire to. That's the model maybe you follow. And I think Nebraska, the other part of this, too, is from an evaluation standpoint. I mean, Ohio State's talent, I mean, they go get Sunday guys. They are first-rounders. That's their reputation. It's quarterbacks and receivers. Oregon's been good with the lines, but they have really not messed up at quarterback. I mean, if you think about what Oregon's done at quarterback, they've had a stack of quarterbacks 10 years ago with Mariota. You got Herbert that followed. Bo Nix you get from the portal, and then you go portal shopping again with Gabriel. That's been incredible. As good as their lines have been and the speed they have, they've had the difference maker at quarterback to at least get you to that championship level. What does Nebraska have at the quarterback spot moving forward with Dylan? And then what you do with him can set you up for beyond, because what Nebraska, or I should say what Oregon did with Mariota, really opened the door. They hit on Herbert right after, and then you look at the here and now with Nix and Gabriel the last 3 seasons. It's been pretty big time. Yeah, so absolutely. A lot of folks in the chat and the stream are circling Penn State as, you know, that team that maybe Nebraska can model after. And yeah, I don't discount the blueprint right now. The idea, the vision makes a lot of sense, but you gotta move forward. And you know, Franklin had that breakthrough. That one win over the top 5 was that Penn State victory over Ohio State in year 3. Jock Doc's on the way. It's Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us. Dr. Brandon, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. How are we doing?
Hey, Merry Christmas, fellas. We're doing great. How about you guys?
We are. We're a little more mobile than Patrick Mahomes today, as we talk. There could be there probably will be a Carson Wentz sighting, but big old Andy Reid, Big Red, says he's got full confidence in the backup. Kind of an ugly game against Cleveland. The Chiefs won last Sunday, 21-7, Dr. Brandon, but have that high right ankle sprain. I know we've talked about him before, but you've got Mahomes pretty hobbled, and this is one of those injuries that just linger, and you're on the doorstep of the postseason.
Yeah, they sure do. You know, we have talked about these before and how pesky these are, and you know, I think the famous line of these is always, this is not your typical ankle sprain. A lot of folks think that. Coaches sometimes think that, and it's like, why is this kid taking so long to get back? Well, they're just different. It's a higher level of trauma. It's in a little different area, and as you mentioned, it just takes longer to get over. It's easy to kind of retweak. You know, I always like to review some anatomy as we kind of talk about these. So as we talk about a high ankle sprain, you're like, well, what does that mean? Well, if you think about the ankle joint itself, you got obviously the inside, the outside, kind of those two two ball portions on the inside and outside. Where this injury occurs is a little further up. So basically there's this strong ligamentous structure that's between those two bones that make up the ankle. So there's the tibia, and then there's the fibula, a smaller bone. There's this big ligament that sits in between them and kind of runs all the way up, kind of about mid-shaft on the tibia. And it's called the syndesmosis, really strong, thick ligament. And so in order to get into that, you actually twist the ankle a different direction than kind of your typical, hey, I stepped on another player's foot and rolled my ankle to the outside. This is a different kind of mechanism where basically if you think about your midfoot and your toes moving to the outside, it's kind of this rotational mechanism in that direction. And that basically rotates through and essentially stretches and eventually tears that ligament between those two bones. There's differing, levels of these sprains, and so there's kind of that low-grade one where you still have a lot of that ligament left. There's no significant instability there, and those are the ones you treat non-operatively, which it seems like that's kind of where we are with Mahomes at this point. And then obviously it goes up from there where you start to take more of it and become more unstable, and then you start to move into that more surgical realm in terms of the treatment for that.
It's Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here, a Jock Doc Wednesday, Hail Varsity Radio, as we talk Patrick Mahomes, the ankle injury that he suffered on Sunday. And Dr. Brandon, whenever you look at this injury, Patrick Mahomes, a full participant at practice both yesterday and today, which means he might be on track to make a quick turnaround with this. And if it is a quick turnaround, what issues do you foresee early in this process? Let's say he plays on Sunday. What type of pain is he going to be dealing with? And what can be done to kind of alleviate that pain, should he be a go on Sunday?
Yeah, absolutely. So your big concerns with these always is it's that number one rule of, can I protect myself? Does the player feel confident enough they can protect themselves and move out of the way if they're about to get into some contact? So that's goal one. So you'd have to kind of match that first. Secondly, he's obviously going to be somewhat limited from a mobility perspective. This won't be fully healed when he does play. But again, the question is, can you, A, be effective? And number two, most importantly, can you protect yourself? And then the third thing is obviously pain. Pain's going to be a part of this. Managing the discomfort related to it is going to be a big factor. These do hurt quite a bit. And usually what happens here, the reason these do hurt is you tend to have deep bone bruises that occur. So you tend to bruise kind of that bottom bone of the ankle called the talus. It's kind of a dome-shaped bone at the bottom of the ankle. You tend to have a deep bone bruise that happens with this. It kind of feels like a stress fracture, if you will. You can also bruise kind of on part of the ankle as well, kind of like a deep bone bruise. That's different than normal, just soft tissue bruise. And so that tends to go with it. And those just hurt. That's a lot of where the pain comes from. And then, obviously the big thing is just, can you cut effectively? Can you cut off the foot? Can you plant the foot and throw? All those kind of things are going to be, big question marks for him. Things you can do to help that feel better. Obviously, utilizing some kind of ankle brace is important. Clearly, you're probably going to change kind of your play calling for him and what he's doing in terms of his mobility. Those kind of things can help. If you said, what would you not do? Well, I definitely wouldn't go down like the injection pathway. This is not a good area to start putting like a steroid shot in. Not a good area to do like lidocaine shots to try to numb up the area. That would not work out well long term, and so I wouldn't imagine they would consider doing those things. Utilizing some anti-inflammatories is reasonable. So, of course, ibuprofen, those types of things you could utilize. Sometimes even a stronger anti-inflammatory that'd be more prescription-based is probably on the menu here as well. But those would be kind of the big things you do, and then it just becomes a matter of how well can he perform for you and how confident and comfortable does he feel going out there and playing.
And Dr. Brandon, I know I said on Sunday, but the Chiefs are actually playing on Saturday, which is, I had this question all ready to go, and I still went and said Sunday. That's the muscle memory, the habit of talking NFL football. It's still weird we get those occasional late season Saturday games. But the question I was going to ask is related to that timetable, only 6 days in between the injury and the next game. Mm-hmm. Is this an injury where 24 hours could make all the difference in his ability to return?
Yeah, that's a good point. Probably not. These are, again, they're tough injuries. It's pretty significant mechanism of injury to get to this point. A lot of energy goes through that to create that injury. And so, that timetable of pushing it within a week is pretty tough for anybody. I tend to not see these turn the corner significantly until you kind of get more like 10 or 14 days out. And so they're pushing the envelope a little bit here. Again, it really all depends on kind of what grade level that injury was.
Dr. Brandon, let's talk stability of this right ankle, and it's the back plant area for Mahomes, the right-handed thrower. We know how dynamic he's been, extending plays in his career, and the mobility's been a big part of that. Yeah, you got to figure that he'll have quite a bit of limited mobility if he does get the nod and wants to go out. What about stability? I mean, can you brace this, wrap this, so it while it might be a little bit painful, you can, I guess, tend to forget about it while you're back there trying to find a receiver?
Yeah, just doing kind of that straight drop back, not a significant amount of mobility, probably could make it happen, within 7 to 10 days. Bracing is obviously what I would utilize for this. The bracing tends to be more effective, I think, than taping. But that's, kind of variable just in terms of how the athletes feel. But I'm more of a brace person in this scenario. And I think stability-wise, if he goes out and takes some reps, moves around pretty well here on Friday, I think he'll be okay from that perspective. I don't think he's going to feel a ton of stability if he's really trying to do a lot of scrambling, or if he's trying to do even some, running plays, bending plays with his feet. Is going to be, I think, a battle for him at this point.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Talking Patrick Mahomes at high right ankle sprain. What is the treatment now? Is it some anti-inflammatories? Is it heat? Is it ice? What's the playbook?
Yeah, absolutely. So, all of the above on those. But you definitely want to get going early with mobilization here. So you want to work on the range of motion so it doesn't stiffen up too much. You want to work on some strengthening part of it. What you want to try to avoid, though, is obviously a lot of that we call axial loading, where you're planting the foot and cutting. So those are the kind of things you want to really back off on. So your limited practice time, limiting those things, at least for the first couple of days. And then obviously if you're thinking about playing on Saturday, I would say, Friday afternoon you go out and do some drills, kind of test the waters a little bit on Friday, loosen things up, and then on Saturday put the uniform on and just see how you feel in warm-ups, as I think how they'll take this.
Dr. Brandon, we'll get caught up again soon. Thanks for the time.
Sounds great, fellas. Take care.
Good to spend time with Dr. Brandon. We'll wind down a Wednesday with Hail Varsity and Hail Varsity YouTube channel.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, a Wednesday edition, Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhody. Big thanks to Evan Bland and Mike Babcock and Dr. Brandon Seifert. Tomorrow on the show, we'll run down Brandon Vogel, catch up with Damon Benning, Coach Gary Barnett, Danny Burke with us, Burke's Best Bets. And find the podcast, Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio. Search for that. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And take us with kind of programming schedule. We are locked in through Friday, and then the weekend edition, of course, we'll have some best ofs going on the 24th. Back live the 27th from Ameristar Council Bluffs Casino right outside Amerisports, getting you ready for the Nebraska-Boston College matchup, that Friday show before the 28th, when Nebraska gets going at 11 a.m. on ABC. We'll have some weekend editions that'll be going. And, of course, the Average Joe, our side project podcast, that a live pod tonight at 7:30. Reminder to get buckled up. Driving is a full-time job. Phones, food, and friends, they all need your attention, just not when you're driving. Stop the distractions. Just drive. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Good back and forth in the stream. Hail Varsity YouTube on that program that maybe Nebraska can emulate or become in the Big Ten when we talk about playoff participants. You showed me something that isn't in the holiday spirit, Elijah, for what is out there on social media with our Lord and Savior Jesus wearing Indiana gear.
Well, it's
our Lord
AI.
and Savior, it's AI. Thank you. It's not. Yeah, Elijah didn't create this. He just said, "Look at this, dude," and it's the good Lord with the old Signetti signature.
I think it's supposed to be Touchdown Jesus.
It is. Touchdown Jesus will be alive and well on TV. Right there for Friday night college football playoff. It's got Jesus wearing a Indiana jersey. He's got a pack of Signetti cigarettes and has got a heater going.
Yeah, it's touchdown Jesus smoking that Signetti pack, I guess.
Touchdown Jesus has been hitting the ab crunch rack. Good gravy.
Yeah, I bet. But yeah, that's the touchdown Jesus into AI. Wow. That's funny. Indiana fan is laughing at this. Notre Dame fan not. And that's, you talk about pressure for Notre Dame. They host, but you can't lose that in-state battle.
You can't. Well, and here's my question.
Hilarious.
My question to you is, I think I know the answer to this, but if Indiana goes out there and just gets killed on Friday night, how do you evaluate their season? Well, I think it's successful still.
It's a great season. It's an amazing season.
But with the amount of guys you're going to be losing this offseason.
The only two teams you played, you got boat raced by.
That were good.
He got paid. You flipped it. His job right now is to stay in that 7-8 win neighborhood and then jump.
So similar to Bielema, Illinois.
Right. Is he the second coming of Michigan State, the 11-2? And then they fall off
a mountaintop. Yeah.
Right. You can't do that or be that. I don't think Signetti is a pretty valued Saban disciple will fall off. I think he'll keep evaluating talent.
But yeah, that's kind of what it is to me is
what's their staying power?
What is their staying power that determines how I evaluate this season? But for now, I think even if they get killed on Friday, good season.
No. Well, Notre Dame's for real. They're pretty good. Talk tomorrow at 4. Thanks.